This is Father Andrew Ritchie, and you're listening to Catholic Inspiration, a podcast from my website at studyprayserve.com. These homilies, presentations, and retreats form part of my ministry as a Catholic priest for the Diocese of Superior. And now I invite you to open your hearts to some Catholic inspiration. The interesting thing about being a little kid when you can't breathe is that I had all sorts of sinus infections. I was in a croup tent when I was an infant. And I understood very quickly that, when I get a cold, my mother would get nervous. Now, the interesting thing is that I was about 9 years old, and it got really bad. And my mom and my dad had a quiet conversation. The next thing I know, I'm in the emergency room, and after that, I found out that it was tonsillitis with mononucleosis. And so I got to be a guest at the Cumberland Hilton Hotel. And for 5 days, I was in the hospital. And because they were really worried about where the mono was and what was going on with the tonsillitis and what it was doing to my breathing, I had that experience of what it's like as a little kid to be all alone in the hospital. And I hated it. By the way, the needles are 4 feet long. And because it was mono, and at the time in the complications, I had to have blood work done morning and afternoon, and they would test to see where I was coming. And I remember being terrified. I remember that feeling all too well. I remember the feeling of being scared and alone. And then I remember when the parish priest, Father Al Vertigan, came to see me. Father Al was a jolly, friendly, fun, kind guy. He came into the room, and he prayed with me, and I wasn't in a good place at the moment. Frankly, I was throwing up. And Father Al just continued to be present in the space and say, hey, it's going to be okay. You're in a good place. They're going to take care of you. It's going to be all right. I'm going to say some prayers, Andy. You're going to be okay. And it gave me a concrete example of faith that responds to fear. That in the midst of when we feel particularly persecuted, isolated, alone, when that feeling, sometimes it's in the gut, sometimes it's in the chest, that constricts us, limits us, chains us. When overwhelming fear comes, we could take to heart this reading that comes to us from Matthew's Gospel. And Jesus says 2 times, take courage, do not be afraid. This awareness that Jesus comes to us. And first the disciples, they were terrified, they were scared, they were worried. And then the second time Peter's walking on the water, he's terrified, he's scared. Jesus saves. Jesus meets them where they're at, bridges the gap, and breaks through the fear. The answer, friends, that we look at in the midst of our fears is that God comes to us to cast out the fear. That God comes to us, not to say that we don't experience fear, but that we will not be ruled by it. We will not let fear chain us, imprison us, rule us. And when fear comes, and depending on how you feel it and where you feel it in your body and how it expresses itself, it's precisely at that moment that we double down and we call upon the Lord. We call upon the Lord for strength, for healing, salvation, direction, wisdom, insight, and peace. Because there are times when the panic button can go right through the roof. And we say, Lord, save me. Lord, help me. And Jesus comes. This is the good news that God brings to the worst fears we might face. God comes to help us in the midst of our struggles and trials. God comes to bridge that gap and bring us out of the darkness into light. And so, friends, I ask you right now, what are you afraid of? Because no matter what it is, no matter what those feelings are, we can set them before the altar of God and say, Lord, save me, just as you saved Peter. Lord, help me, just as you helped those disciples. Lord, shine your light into the dark corners of my heart, because I don't want to live with the shadows. And friends, when we take the time to confront our fears head on with faith, we have help from heaven. What are you afraid of? I simply ask that not to cause us to have choking sensations. I ask it so that we can name it, set it before the Lord, and allow the Lord to heal it, strengthen it, and guide us to confront the fears of this life as we make our way to the next. Fears are going to be part of our situation. We know that. But we need not be led by fear. We're led by faith. And in the faith we profess, God helps us and guides us every step of the way. God bless you all. This is Father Andrew Ritchie, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of Catholic Inspiration. These homilies, podcasts, presentations, and retreats are part of my ministry. And folks, if you found it helpful, please feel free to share my podcast with someone you know and love in the hopes that it will help them in their journey of faith. And you can help me if you just go back to your podcast engine and write me a rating and a review. I keep all my listeners in my daily prayers, and I ask that you remember me and yours as well. God bless you, my friends.